This is the Rural Homelessness Podcast, where we discuss the important issues around rural homelessness, hear from those affected by it, and offer some solutions. Brought to you by the award-winning homelessness charity, The Ferry Project. Welcome to the Rural Homelessness Podcast. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Rural Homelessness Podcast. I am your host, Matt McClary, and thank you so much for joining me on this episode today. Now, on this episode, we are going to be speaking about the challenges of employment in rural areas. And I'm joined by two guests, Russell Beale, who is the engagement specialist at Anglian Water, and also Terry Jordan, who is the clerk and the responsible financial officer for Wisbech Town Council. So let's welcome our guests to the show today. Hello, Russell.
Good morning.
And hello, Terry. Welcome.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us today on the Rural Homelessness Podcast. And we're going to be chatting about employment in rural areas. And both of you experience business and employment and things like that in rural areas. So it would be great to get your thoughts and opinions on the topic. Let's start with you, Russell. Please, can you give us an insight into your work and the company you're a part of and, you know, its employment statistics and all that kind of thing?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So I work for Anglian Water. I actually work for the Anglian Water Alliance. The Anglian Water Alliance is a sort of framework partnership. So a lot of companies as part of our supply chain. The Anglian Water Alliance has basically been set up for the delivery of our capital program. So lots of work to do there. But also, as I say, lots of opportunities really for employment there. In terms of me, I work on the stakeholder engagement side. So I do a lot of liaison with local authorities and other sort of planning application consultees. So I do quite a bit of work around that. I also have a role to work with business in the community. Business in the Community is a membership organisation. It's based in London. Companies like Anglian Water subscribe to Business in the Community, and it's all about, you know, what can business do to support communities. And obviously we've been doing a lot supporting Wisbech over, I think it's 12 years now, Terry. So
it probably is, yeah.
Quite a long time. But yeah, as I say, I get involved in that stuff. I think you mentioned employment stats there, Matt, if I remember correctly. We've got about 5,000 people working directly in Anglian Water, but you know, if you take all of those people in the supply chain, you can certainly triple that sort of number. So quite a big organisation.
Thanks, Russell. That's really good to know. And Terry, as someone who works in Wisbech and knows Wisbech quite well, what are some of the typical industries that offer employment in this rural location?
Thanks, Matt. Yes, I think I do know Wisbech quite well. Currently the clerk to the town council, but I have worked in local government, just started my 48th year in local government, and I've worked for the county council, the district council, and various town and parishes. So all of that is involved supporting people in Wisbech. Town council is very keen to support people in Wisbech in any way that it can. And it works with lots of partners, including Anglian Water, to deliver some of its ambitions. Traditionally, the employment in Wisbech has tended to be in agriculture or associated businesses such as canning, road haulage, those types of activities. However, obviously, as agriculture has moved forward in terms of mechanization, there's fewer labour opportunities than there used to be. There are some very large factory employers, such as Nestlé Purina, and the employers generally in Wisbech either tend to be large or very small. There are very few medium-sized employers. So, for example, if a large business closed, that would have a significant impact on the employment situation in the town. Wisbech is fairly unique in that, for example, towns like March, they've got a number of small, medium-sized businesses, and they've also got much more employment in terms of, shall we say, administrative services and financial services that appears to be the case in Wisbech. Apart from sort of factory work, as I've mentioned, companies such as Nestle, majority of people in the town then either tend to work in retail or hospitality. However, since the sort of COVID pandemic in the 3 or 4 years ago, that's had a significant impact on town centres in terms of certainly retail. And obviously there again, that's had an impact on the amount of employability that there is in the town centre.
I don't think Wisbech is alone in that. I think that sort of impact on the sort of the town centre and the whole idea of communities gathering in a centre, I think that has been dramatically impacted by COVID and sort of what we've seen since then across the country. What do you think?
I think you're absolutely right. I think people's sort of shopping habits have changed. The way that they work has changed. Fewer people are actually coming into town to work. So there again, that has an impact on the town centre. And I agree, Matt, Wisbech is not standalone in that situation. I think we're reflective of the national trends. And we're also finding the same impact on our traditional market that we operate in the town centre. But we do what we can as a town council. We run events in the town centre. We do other activity to try to pull people into that space to spend their money in the shops, which obviously consequently helps to retain and generate employment opportunities.
Russell, does Anglian Water find a difference in employees from a rural background as opposed to an urban background? What's your experience with that?
It's an interesting question, Matt. I would say in terms of aspiration of some of those youngsters, from what I've seen, from students coming out of Thomas Clarkson, for example, we've done a bit of work there. I don't personally think there's any difference in the aspiration. I think the difference is probably in the opportunity.
Can I just interrupt you there, Russell, just for a bit? Just to explain to our listeners that Thomas Clarkson is a secondary school in Wisbech. It does sound like a bloke's name because it is.
Well, it is, yeah.
but it is actually a school named after him. So just in case listeners are getting confused. Sorry, carry on, Russell. What were you saying?
So so Thomas Clarkson Academy, we've done some work with the Academy over a period of time. We've looked at things like sixth form interviews, and so having some direct experience of that, as I say, I think when you talk to those students, the aspiration is there, but maybe the opportunity within Wisbech locally is not there. So it's that sort of difference. But I think, I met with some of the apprentices at the College of West Anglia a couple of weeks ago, and to be honest, they were amazing, absolutely amazing. They were pleased to have the opportunity, I think, to be on a course. They were on a construction course and a sort of utility operative type course. These are courses sponsored by Anglian, but I think from what I was seeing in terms of their, the opportunity they were having, the delight in being on those courses was there for all to see, really. And, all credit to the College of West Anglia, for helping to build the confidence, for, sort of driving those opportunities forward. It was really great to see.
I must admit, for me, I've been involved in the education sector for about a decade and a half. Not anymore, but I was. One of the things I've noticed is that there tends to be a gap. Kids come to school and they stay in education here, but when it comes to higher education, when it comes to university, all of a sudden there's nothing really in the rural area. So they all have to go to a big city somewhere to go to a university. But then the problem, and that's okay, because big cities can support that kind of infrastructure that's needed for that type of higher education, but it's then attracting them back again. It's kind of, you go to school, you leave, and then you never come back. So what can we do? What are your thoughts of trying to attract the graduates back into a rural economy to help contribute to what's going on here? Have we got any ideas there?
Partly it's about the reality of the rural situation compared to a city situation. I think one of the problems that Wisbech has is the public transport connectivity. We've been talking quite a bit, Terry, haven't we, about the reopening of the railway line, and just improving that connectivity. And I think one of the ways forward may be to see, if you could get on the train in Wisbech and be in the middle of Cambridge in sort of 50 minutes time, you would see a lot more people living in the town. Okay, they're not necessarily working within the town, but if they're commuting back to Wisbech, that would help that local economy. It would be a bit of a game changer, I think, in terms of more opportunities in the town, but also help to take the town sort of forward from a sort of regeneration point of view. So I think this is partly about connectivity, but it needs something like that to see some transformation, I think, in terms of more skilled opportunities within the town. So, I don't know if you agree with that, Terry, but those are some of the thoughts I have.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you completely, and I think all those people, even if they are going, from Wisbech to Cambridge to work, they're still living locally. Then at the weekends, for example, they can be putting money back into the local economy, which there again helps to, as I say, maintain and generate employment in the town.
That's interesting. You mentioned the Wisbech railway line. Wisbech is a fairly large town to not have a railway station. There are much smaller towns around us that do have railway stations, so it is a bit of a mystery. But we've heard about this over the years. Do any of you know where we're up to with that? Because you kind of hear something and then you don't. And do we know where we're at the moment with the Wisbech rail and possibly maybe getting something to help improve that kind of connectivity?
Well, Terry may be better placed than me to answer that question, but I know there's appraisals going on, Terry, in the background. I know the Cambridge and Peterborough Combined Authority have been working with Network Rail around that process. What we do know, Terry, is that it's a very long-winded process.
I think it's a very long-winded process and a very expensive process. I think we're talking potentially, as I've heard in the past, hundreds of millions of pounds to get rail back into Wisbech. But my understanding is it's still on the agenda as an issue. But as Russell said, how quickly it can be achieved, who knows? But the Wisbech 2020 Vision Partnership, it was high on its agenda and it was really pushing for it. And as I understood it, we had the support of the local MP, but it's like a lot of things, these things take a lot of pushing through. And I think, as you said, Matt, I think Wisbech is one of the largest towns in the UK without a railway station, and ideally it's something we'd all like to see addressed.
You make a good point there, Terry. If you had this opportunity with the rail, I think you would see a change in Wisbech. We know there's like the town centre, it's been struggling, like a lot of town centres. But what we're seeing in Wisbech, of course, is buildings almost physically collapsing. Not just boarded up, but seeing some real, dilapidation in terms of those buildings. And I think it needs something of a big change, something like the railway, to start to see that turnaround. I'm not saying that's everything that needs to happen, but I think it needs something of that order to start to see some real change. And I think, as Terry's point there, if you can start to see that, it certainly then starts to generate new opportunities for people within the town.
I think also, if I may, picking up Matt's point about lack of opportunity for graduates in the town, I think there again, if graduates are looking for somewhere to settle, irrespective of the employment, they're looking for other activity and what else is going on. And for a lot of people, if they feel that Wisbech is really isolated because it has poor transport connectivity, and particularly a rail station, that's probably another reason why they would look to other places, shall we say, such as Peterborough, Cambridge, etc., that have those facilities.
Coming back to employment more specifically, we've already mentioned one of the barriers to employment in a rural area such as Wisbech is this transport connectivity. Terry, what are some of the other challenges that are faced by employers as well as employees in rural areas like Wisbech?
I think, as I sort of understand, is that some employers do find it difficult to attract employees with the right skills locally. And in fact, I was at a meeting yesterday hosted by the National Trust at Peckover, and they were saying that whenever they have a vacancy linked to some of their property or assets in Wisbech, especially management positions, they don't get applications from local people, which is something they'd like to try to address. So, that probably goes back to the point about people wanting or not wanting to work in Wisbech if they are graduates. I think some of the employers, I'd like to commend Anglian Water for the work that they're doing in terms of growing people through the College of West Anglia, through their apprenticeships into roles locally, and they've had some real successes in that. I think also employers not only suffer, we're saying employees might suffer from lack of connectivity and transport. I think the same is affected by employers. They also struggle with no railway station, the fact that not much of the A47 is dualled, and I think Wisbech is perceived as being in the middle of nowhere, whether that's an accurate assessment or not. I think there are also sometimes poor connectivity digitally, not just in terms of physical infrastructure, and people can feel cut off, and some businesses really struggle if they need to do a lot of their business online, but every business will need to be connected in some way, even if they don't transact their business that way, in terms of information that they need to achieve, and also financial returns and things, that accounts and things that they need to submit. But I think transport is a big issue, certainly for employees. For example, if somebody lives in March but works in Wisbech and need to rely on the bus, there's now no bus service on a Sunday between those two largest towns. So people then physically can't get to work on that one day of the week. So I think that is an issue, but it's something that people are trying to address. And I think the combined authority of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, I think the bus service review is being carried out. And there's also a Fenland and Transport and Access group, of which I'm a member. And there again, it looks to improve or address issues in terms of rural transport, but it is difficult because a lot of it comes down to funding, and no longer is the case that local authorities can put significant subsidies into bus services. I think another issue for employees, as I understand it, unemployment is low and possibly certainly no more than the national average, but a lot of the work is either part-time, low wage, 0 hours contract, or a combination of all of those things, which I don't think helps. Obviously, employees in terms of security and stability and the ability. For example, if you've got a 0 hours contract, it's going to be very difficult to get a mortgage because some weeks you could be earning no money. So it's so those sort of implications and situations for employees. I don't know whether obviously Russell's got anything to add, because obviously Anglian Water is a large employer and it operates in the town.
Well, it's quite a complex picture, I think, in terms of employment opportunities in the town. I briefly mentioned there the apprentices that are coming out of the college. We've had some wonderful people join that Anglian Water Alliance. There's been some real success stories there. You've probably seen we're building a pipeline through Fenland at the moment, part of a larger strategic pipeline. I certainly know one apprentice that's come out of the College of West Anglia that's actually working on that pipeline. There are some opportunities. Some apprentices, certainly again, I can think of one apprentice that's come into Anglian Water. He's now at university as well. He's doing a degree in civil engineering. So, there has been some real success stories. There hasn't been a lot of those opportunities, but we are still sponsoring those courses at the college. And I think, my view on apprenticeships is that they're really good. Yeah. For somebody that's more practical minded, but wants to move forward with their career, the College of West Anglia is well worth a look in terms of those opportunities. And it's not just construction. Obviously, they do a whole range of of courses. So I think for a lot of students in particular, that's great. That's something well worth a look. The other thing I would say in terms of homeless people, the Ferry Project, absolutely doing some amazing stuff. I think big credit to Keith and the team there in terms of the 25-year jubilee. But for a lot of people, this is about getting back on your feet, isn't it? You've almost got to go back to that first stage, and that's where I think big stuff going on. Some amazing stuff going on, but there is such a gap between that start point and getting back on the employment ladder. Again, some real success stories with the Ferry Project, but I think, in terms of rural homelessness, that's that complex part of it is something you can't ignore. But we have seen some opportunities and some real successes.
You're right, Russell. Homelessness is a very complex issue. And actually, a lot of what Terry was saying just a little while ago, where you were speaking about the problems faced by employers and employees, and you mentioned things like digital connectivity and transport links and the bus service not, being what we would hope it to be to get us from one place to another. And a lot of homeless people find those key issues as well. I mean, applying for universal credit and all this kind of thing, you got to do online. You got to have a phone. You got to have somewhere to plug your phone in. You got to have a connection. You've got to be able to pay for your SIM card top up. And and a homeless person really struggles to do that. And where do you plug your phone in to charge it if you've even got a phone in the first place? And if then you have to go somewhere for a job interview or a universal credit interview, and it's in March or it's in Peterborough, and so now you've got to get from where you are to that place, and it's very, very difficult. So a lot of what you're saying that affects employment also impacts people experiencing homelessness as well. So Terry, carrying on the homelessness theme, in your opinion, how do the employment prospects of certainly the main type of employment opportunities available in rural areas, how do these leave people more vulnerable to homelessness?
Well, I think, so going back to a number of the issues that we've already covered, I think all of those link through. And also, I made the point earlier, didn't I, about some people having no guaranteed income because of 0 hours contracts, or very, very low wages to a point where, although they're in work, it's not sufficient. I think that can lead to all sorts of issues when people are suffering difficult financial circumstances, breakdown in relationships, people finding coping strategies which are probably not in their best interest. I think you understand what I'm saying. All leading to a point where they're unable to either remain in a property for relationship reasons, for example, or they're unable to continue to afford to live in a property or support the running of a property. Ultimately, the potential is, as I see it, to be homeless.
And one of the things in Wisbech as well is we have a lot, I think. I don't know the statistics or sort of to compare it with other places, but I know we have a lot of HMOs, houses of multiple occupancy, and a lot of sort of landlords, and the rental market is huge. In Wisbech, as opposed to sort of people owning a house and that sort of thing. And I know we've got a new government now, and they're focusing on housing and trying to address some of these issues. And one of the things that was flying around sort of pre and post elections was this whole thing about no fault evictions, and how they also play a part in causing homelessness. So maybe we'll see some movement on that front as well in the future. Who knows? But that's also another issue, I think, as well as not affording rent or getting into sort of a lifestyle habit that might cause you to lose your home. Also no fault evictions and things like that as well. Also playing a part there. Do you think the availability of jobs and employment prospects have an impact on rural homelessness? How do they link together?
I think, as we've been saying, it's a complex one, isn't it? There's lots of challenges in here, as you've been saying, Matt. One of the things we did working with Keith and the team at the Ferry Project, this is going back sort of pre-COVID, we had a little jobs club, didn't we, Terry?
Yeah, you did. Yeah,
Mary's Centre.
Yeah.
And that was a bit of a bridge, and maybe we need to go back and do something like that. But you're quite right. For Ferry Project, amazing at helping to get people back on the feet. So the health issues, whatever it is, identifying some particular training type stuff. But that whole thing about health and well-being, such an important part of sort of moving forward. The little jobs club almost was a bridge then. It's, well, what next then? And of course, it was very informal, but as you've been saying, Matt, there wasn't, people didn't have CVs, they didn't have access to a computer. Well, as we know, virtually every job these days, you've got to apply online.
Yeah.
So if you haven't got access to a computer or a printer or whatever, you're going to struggle with that. And the Jobs Club was about trying to bridge that. And all credit to, as I say, to Keith and the team for trying to make that work. And of course, what you were seeing was, people that perhaps had worked on the land for most of their lives, and reached a point in, an age point where perhaps they just physically weren't able to continue with that. Well, what next then?
Yeah.
And it's almost, you almost need the right environment to be able to talk about that. And I'm not knocking the job centre or the employment centre, but that sort of can be quite a formal process. Whereas I think the idea is something more informal, where you can get people talking, sharing ideas, sharing, those challenges just seem to work for me. And I'm not sure about you, Terry, but that just seemed like a bit of a bridge to help people.
I agree. To be honest, I'd not forgotten about the Job Club, but hadn't really realised that it stopped, because it's one of those things you almost assume will continue because it should continue. But a lot of these things are reliant on being funded, aren't they? And funding is more and more difficult to come across. But I think also as well, through the Job Club, it probably helped people with their well-being in terms of they were meeting other people they may not have met before. And I think there was as you said, Russell, an informal atmosphere. It was quite a social event, so it helped people with other issues. And I think even potentially showing people that there are volunteering opportunities, so that they can increase their skills, if you like. So, for example, they could, with work potentially, say, for a charity, in a charity shop, people could develop cash handling skills, team working skills, all those things that are all going to be useful for a CV. And a lot of people have actually got more skills than they realise. They don't think of perhaps, running a household budget is a skill. They don't realise that driving a car is a skill. If it's got value to somebody else potentially, then it is a skill. So people need to be encouraged to really think about what they can do and whether some of those skills are transferable from even perhaps the domestic life or a previous work environment to take it forward to a new one. But you're absolutely right in terms of, as you say, if you've had somebody who's worked on the land for 40 years and have done sort of manual type work, to then be faced by, here's a job to apply for, here's a computer, get on with it. And it's just not as easy. So people do need support, and it would be great, to be able to keep something like the job club going. But I think it was a great thing. And as I say, all of these things where we can get people together and support them is what we should be doing. And also, may not be the appropriate time, but I want to concur with the comments made by Russell about the effectiveness of the Ferry Project. It's in my opinion possibly relatively easy to put a roof over someone's head, but to transform their lives to a point where they can be back in society and supporting themselves, which is what the Ferry Project achieves, I think is great work.
And I think there's an important point here. We could all be homeless, that paycheck. It doesn't take long to, for the majority of people, it doesn't take long to actually run out of money.
No.
And for some of the people getting themselves into that situation, as you say, Terry, quite often they've had quite successful careers, before reaching that point. And whether it's a health issue or a marriage breakdown or loss of work, it doesn't actually take much to get from, quite a successful position to a position where it's all gone wrong. And when it's all gone wrong, it really needs a lot of support. And as you say, it's not just a roof over your head and some food. Great, that's part of what you need, but it's right. What next then? And so I think there's some really important stuff in here. But a lot of these people, as you say, Terry, they have some really good skills, and that can be tapped into. And it's just neat. They just need that opportunity to sort of move it forward again. But it's a complex one. But I think once you start to get your head around some of that bit. And realise that some of these people, they have gone from a successful position to actually, a very difficult position. And yes, we could all be in that position.
Yeah, I mean, I'd heard anecdotally some comment made somewhere, I can't recall where, that a number of people are 2 paychecks away from homelessness.
Exactly. Yeah. So complex, I would say, Matt.
Complex issues.
One that when you start thinking about it, when you start breaking the components down, you can relate to it and understand it. Yeah. This has happened to people for a number of different reasons,
and of course, employment can be part of the problem, but it can also be part of the solution.
Yeah.
So that's really good. So as we come to close this episode, I just want to pick both of your brains and just ask, and I might be able to guess what some of your answers are, but I'll wait and see if I'm proved right or not. What are your hopes or ideal dreams? What would they be for the employment prospects of rural areas like Wisbech?
I think for Wisbech, that regeneration of the town is a really important factor. I think there has to be some funding. Terry's point, there has to be some funding in here. Maybe a change of government is something that would help that process. But I think something, there has to be some game changes, I think, with the local economy. And from that, you will see, the health and well-being challenges moving forward. You'll see more jobs. You'll see, what is essentially a wonderful town. Fantastic heritage, fantastic history. So unique. But obviously it has been in decline. It just needs something to turn it round and move it forward. And I think, on the back of that, you will see more housing, some better housing, but certainly some more opportunities. So I think there's something really important there about, that wider picture for the town and about grabbing that opportunity at the first time you can, the first opportunity you can do. Yeah.
Thanks, Russell. Hopes and dreams, Terry.
Yeah, not surprisingly, I agree with everything that's been said by Russell. I think what we need, we certainly need a number of things. We need more retail in town centres. I realise that's probably pushing against the tide, but we need a way of making town centres vibrant and viable. Nobody wants rows of empty shops, but we just need to probably reset some mindset if we can, so that people aren't buying everything from Amazon. As an example, obviously there are other suppliers via the internet.
Other online retailers.
There are other online retailers. Yeah, we possibly need, in terms of security, more medium-sized businesses, because I think I said before, if you get a large employer that disappears, significant impact in terms of the population. And obviously it's not just those people potentially losing their jobs, then they've got less money to spend, so they're not spending their money locally in retail, for example, and also then they're pulling money out of the economy as opposed to putting money into the economy. So that would be useful to Wisbech to get medium-sized employers. I think we need a wider range of jobs. I think it might be difficult, especially with that rail station and other connectivity issues, to attract jobs, shall we say, in the sort of IT or the high-tech or electronic type activity, as opposed to what's been traditional in this area. Jobs that would pay more, as I said, hopefully that also then benefits people, not only in terms of their lifestyle, but their spend in the local economy. Higher wages, opportunities for people to progress within work. I think there again, people struggle in terms of career ladder. They get to a certain point, it means you've actually got to move away. That's if you've returned from university. So I think there needs to be more opportunity. If you work in a factory, there needs to be opportunity to become management, for example. And that's what I think. More apprenticeships. So I'm a great believer in apprenticeships, and obviously the work that Anglian Water are doing with the College of West Anglia proves the benefit of that. We do need people with skills in terms of trade activities. It's no good us having a situation in this country where everybody just sits behind a computer all day. We need those trades, and I think apprenticeships is a way of growing some of those trades. And also, I know Russell made a comment about aspirations of people in Wisbech are not low. I'm not disagreeing with Russell, but there's a perception of low aspiration, and I think a better range of jobs would raise aspiration levels and people wanting to get more qualifications because they know it's worth them investing their time in trying to develop themselves because the opportunities are there. Russell mentioned funding. I mean, there was a release announced by the previous government, the £20 million Towns Fund, £2 million for Wisbech each year for a 10-year period. I know the town board has just started to meet, and hopefully, potentially, some of that funding will get to a situation where we can help develop the local economy, the local infrastructure, which potentially might lead to job creation or job security in the town.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you, Russell, and thank you, Terry. Thank you so much for joining us on the Rural Homelessness Podcast today. It's been a pleasure chatting with you about employment in rural areas. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Matt.
And thank you for listening to this episode of the Rural Homelessness Podcast. And don't forget, an episode comes out on the 1st and the 15th of every month. So I'll be back again really soon, chatting with some more guests about issues that impact and affect rural homelessness. And I look forward to the pleasure of your company again really soon. Thank you and goodbye. Thank you for listening to the Rural Homelessness Podcast, brought to you by the Ferry Project. Visit our website on www.ferryproject.org.uk.